She wasn't supposed to inherit anything. She was supposed to take your drink order, smile, and disappear back into the crowd. But when Harold Cavanaugh died of a heart attack in his office on a Tuesday morning in 1989, he left everything to a woman his own children had never accepted. A woman who had been carrying cocktail trays on a casino floor when they first met. A woman who had never balanced a business ledger in her life. 4 casinos, 3 states, a fortune that took 30 years to build, and she destroyed all of it in 11 months. The girl from the floor. To understand what Dee Cavanaugh did to that empire, you have to understand where Dee Cavanaugh came from, because where you come from in Las Vegas tells you everything about where you think you are headed. Her name at birth was Doris Jean Pulaski. Born in 1951 in Bakersfield, California, to a mechanic father and a mother who waitressed at a truck stop off Highway 99. She grew up watching her mother carry plates and endure, watching her smile through exhaustion because the tip depended on the smile, watching her come home with swollen feet and a pile of cash she would count on the kitchen table before her husband could get to it. Dee was smart. Everyone who knew her said that first, smart and fast, and the kind of pretty that made men generous with their money. She graduated high school in 1969 and spent 2 years in community college before the money ran out. Her father got hurt. Her mother's hours got cut. And Dee did what a lot of California girls did when the Bills started winning. She drove to Las Vegas. In 1971, the Strip was already transforming. Howard Hughes had been buying up properties for years trying to push the mob out and make Vegas respectable. The Mirage was still 18 years away. The city ran on cigarette smoke and desperation and the electric hum of slot machines that never stopped. Dee got a job at the Four Queens on Fremont Street, downtown, not the Strip, not the glamour hotels. Downtown, where the real Vegas was, where the locals drank and the serious gamblers came to play poker without showgirls getting in the way. She was 20 years old with a cocktail tray and a polyester uniform, and she was magnificent at the job. Fast on her feet, sharp with a comeback, the kind of presence that made regulars request her section night after night. She worked doubles without complaining. She remembered every drink order, every name, every preference. She knew which gamblers needed to be left alone and which ones needed to feel like the most important man in the room. She saved her money. She rented a small apartment off Maryland Parkway with 2 other girls from the casino. She sent $200 a month back to Bakersfield. She was going to be fine. She had decided that. Whatever fine meant, she was going to find it. She just had not planned on Harold Cavanaugh finding it first. The man who owned the keys. Harold Eugene Cavanaugh was not a flashy man. In a city built entirely on flash, that was either a liability or a superpower, and Buddy, as everyone called him, had turned it into the latter. He was born in 1928 in Tonopah, Nevada. Mining country, hard country. The kind of place where the land does not give you anything, and you learn early that neither does anyone else. His father worked a silver claim that played out before Buddy finished grade school. The family moved to Reno, where his father found work running errands for a card room downtown. Buddy grew up around gambling the way other kids grew up around churches. He understood the math before he understood the romance. He knew the house edge was not magic, it was arithmetic. And arithmetic, Buddy understood, was the closest thing to God this business had. He did not go to college, he went to work. He dealt cards at a Reno poker room at 19. He learned floor management at 23. By 30, he was running a small card room in Carson City for a man named Fletcher Briggs, an old Nevada operator who had been in the business since the Depression. When Briggs died in 1961, he left the card room to Buddy in his will. The same way Buddy would later leave his empire to someone nobody expected. That card room became the Silver Spur Club. Nothing fancy. 20 tables, a bar, a short-order kitchen that served the best ham and eggs in Carson City for $1.50. Buddy ran it clean, ran it quiet, and ran it profitably. Over the next 15 years, he expanded. He bought a second property in Elko in 1967, a small casino called the Sagebrush Club on Idaho Street, the kind of place where ranchers came to lose money on payday and felt good about it. Then he added a third in Winnemucca in 1972, and in 1975, the Flagship, a downtown Reno property he bought out of bankruptcy and renamed the Cavalier Club. 4 casinos, none of them spectacular, all of them profitable. Buddy Cavanaugh understood something that the big operators on the Strip never fully grasped. You did not need to be the biggest room in town. You needed to be the most reliable, the place where the regulars knew the staff by name, where the dealers were fair, where the drinks were cold and the house did not cheat. He had a saying he repeated to anyone who would listen. The door that swings open, easy swings open again. He meant it simply, make people comfortable and they come back, and coming back was the whole business. His first marriage, to Patricia Ann Sherwood, produced 3 children, a son named Gary, a daughter named Connie, and another son named Dale. Patricia died of cancer in 1979. Gary and Connie went into the business with their father. Dale moved to Portland and became an accountant. And then Buddy, 60 years old, went to Las Vegas for a gaming conference in the spring of 1981. He had dinner at the Four Queens. Dee Pulaski brought him his scotch and water. He left her a $50 tip. He came back the next night. He left her his phone number. She married the house. Vegas has a word for what people thought of that relationship. Actually, Vegas has several words, none of them polite. Buddy was 30 years older than Dee. He was gray-haired and quiet, and wore the same style of Western shirt he had been wearing since 1960. She was 30 years old with a laugh that carried across a casino floor and ambitions she had not fully named yet. The gossip started the moment Buddy started showing up at the Four Queens twice a month. His daughter Connie, who helped run the Cavalier Club in Reno, said later that she knew from the beginning what this was. She did not mean it as a compliment. But here is the thing about Buddy Cavanaugh that the gossip missed. He was not a fool. He was one of the most deliberate men in Nevada gaming. He didn't do anything without thinking it through for a long time. He'd spent 30 years making careful decisions, and he didn't stop being that man when he fell in love. And he did fall in love. People who knew them both said it. His eyes changed when she walked into a room. He listened to her in a way he'd never listened to anyone. She made him laugh, which was not something Buddy Cavanaugh had been known for. They dated for 2 years. She left the Four Queens. She moved to Reno. She learned the business from the inside, working the Cavalier Club in a management capacity. She learned the count room, and she learned the cage. She learned vendor relationships and payroll, and the 1,000 small decisions that kept a casino breathing, or at least that's what Buddy thought she was learning. They married in October of 1983, in a small ceremony at a ranch outside Sparks, Nevada. 30 people attended. Gary and Connie sat in the back row with their arms crossed and left before the cake was cut. Dale sent a card from Portland. For 6 years they ran the business together. Buddy made the decisions and Dee learned the vocabulary. She could talk the talk. She knew what to say in a room with a gaming regulator. She knew what to say to a vendor who was pushing for a better rate. She understood the language of the business without, as it would turn out, understanding the business itself. There is a difference. In Las Vegas, that difference costs everything. The will nobody saw coming. Harold Cavanaugh walked into his office at the Cavalier Club on the morning of March 14, 1989, poured himself a cup of coffee, sat down at his desk, and died of a massive heart attack before he finished it. He was 60 years old. He had never been sick a day in his adult life. Nobody saw it coming. That is the thing about hearts. They do not give you much warning. His attorney, a Reno lawyer named Calvin Marsh, called the family together 2 weeks after the funeral for the reading of the will. Gary flew in from Carson City. Connie was already in Reno. Dale flew in from Portland. Dee sat at the head of the conference table. Calvin Marsh read slowly and carefully. The way attorneys read documents when they know what is coming is going to require a moment. Harold Eugene Cavanaugh left the Silver Spur Club in Carson City to the Management Corporation. He left his personal savings, approximately $400,000, split 3 ways between his children. He left his personal property, the ranch, the vehicles, the art, to Dee, and he left the remaining 3 casinos, the Sagebrush Club in Elko, the Winnemucca property, and the Cavalier Club in Reno, along with their associated licenses, debts, and operational control, entirely to his wife, Dee Cavanaugh, former cocktail waitress from the Four Queens. She had been married to their father for 6 years. She had no gaming license of her own, no operational experience in her name, and no relationship with any of the people who actually ran those properties day to day. Gary Cavanaugh stood up and walked out of the office without a word. Connie started crying, not grief crying, the other kind. Dale, the accountant from Portland, stayed seated and quietly asked Calvin Marsh how anyone planned to make this legal. Because the Nevada Gaming Commission, as Dale correctly understood, did not simply transfer gaming licenses to a surviving spouse. This was going to require hearings, approvals, background checks, a process that could take months. Dee sat at the head of that table with her hands folded and her face unreadable, and she said very little. She had waited a long time in her life for a door to open. She was not going to wait for anyone's permission to walk through it. 4 casinos, 0 experience. The Nevada Gaming Commission approved Dee Cavanaugh's licensing application in September of 1989, 6 months after Buddy died. It was not without controversy. Gary and Connie filed objections. The family's attorney filed a separate civil suit challenging the will's validity on the grounds that Buddy had not been of sound mind. That suit was dismissed in November. Dee was now the licensed operator of 3 Nevada casinos. Combined, they employed just over 400 people. Combined, their annual revenue under Buddy's management had been approximately $22 million. Not spectacular by Vegas standards, but clean, consistent, and profitable. The people who ran those properties had worked for Buddy for years, some of them for decades. The general manager of the Cavalier Club, a man named Roy Ingersoll, had been with Buddy since 1977. The floor manager at the Sagebrush Club, a woman named Patricia Gaines, had been there since Buddy bought the place. They knew the business, they knew the regulars, they knew every vendor relationship, every quirk in every cash counting process, every seasonal rhythm of the business. Dee fired Roy Ingersoll in October of 1989, 3 weeks after getting her license. She said later that she felt he didn't respect her authority. Roy Ingersoll said later that he'd tried to explain the quarterly cash flow cycle to Dee and she'd told him she didn't need a lecture. Maybe both things were true. She replaced Ingersoll with a man named Vincent Prater, who had been a hotel manager in Tahoe and had no specific casino operations experience. He was charming. He presented well. He had no idea what he was doing. Dee then restructured management at all 3 properties simultaneously. She brought in new faces, people she felt comfortable with, people who weren't loyal to Buddy's memory or his children. She replaced vendors. She renegotiated supplier contracts without fully understanding the terms. She made decisions about floor layouts and table configurations based on how things looked rather than how they operated. She changed the comp structure at the Cavalier Club, restricting complimentary meals and drinks that had kept regulars loyal for 15 years. She said the comp budget was too generous and needed to be trimmed. The regulars noticed immediately. The regulars left. Patricia Gaines at the Sagebrush Club lasted until December. She resigned after Dee overrode her decision about a problematic dealer whom Patricia had recommended terminating. The dealer stayed. Patricia went. The dealer was caught marking cards 2 weeks later. By January of 1990, all 3 casinos were operating below their previous revenue levels. The Sagebrush Club was down 30%. The Winnemucca property was down 18%. The Cavalier was down 24%. Nobody told Dee because she'd stopped having the kinds of conversations where people told her things like that. The first domino falls. The Sagebrush Club in Elko died first. And it died the way a lot of Nevada casinos died in that era, not with a dramatic explosion, but with a slow accumulation of small failures that nobody fixed until fixing them was no longer possible. Elko is a ranching and mining town. In 1990, it had a population of about 15,000 people. The casino business there ran on a tight circuit of regulars, agricultural workers, and highway travelers passing through on Interstate 80. You served those people well, or you did not serve them at all. There was no tourist surplus to absorb your mistakes. Dee had replaced the Sagebrush Club's management with a man named Tommy Ferris, a friend of Vincent Prater's from Tahoe. Tommy Ferris was pleasant and ineffective. He scheduled dealers incorrectly, leaving tables short-staffed during peak hours on Friday nights, while overstaffing on Tuesday afternoons when the floor was empty. He let maintenance requests sit without following up. The air conditioning in the main casino room broke in June of 1990, and it took 3 weeks to repair because Ferris had switched vendors and the new company was slow. In Nevada in summer, 3 weeks without air conditioning in a casino is not a minor inconvenience. It's a death sentence. The regulars went to the Nevada hotel down the street, and a lot of them did not come back. The vendor situation was worse. Dee had renegotiated the beverage supply contract without understanding the volume commitments she had agreed to. The Sagebrush Club was now locked into purchasing quantities of liquor and mixers that exceeded what the property could sell. The excess sat in the stockroom. The invoices piled up. By August of 1990, the Sagebrush Club was 90 days behind on payments to 5 separate vendors. The laundry service stopped coming. The food supplier put them on cash-only terms. The gaming equipment maintenance contractor, whose contract had lapsed because nobody remembered to renew it, sent a technician to pull 3 slot machines that had technical issues, and those machines sat dark in the corner for 6 weeks. And then the payroll check bounced. Not the whole payroll, 2 checks, both to dealers on the swing shift. But in a small casino in a small town where everybody knows everybody, word travels at the speed of sound. By the next morning, every employee at the Sagebrush Club knew. By noon, half the regulars knew. Dee wired funds to cover the checks. She issued a statement through Vincent Prater that it was a banking error. Nobody believed it. On September 12, 1990, the Nevada Gaming Control Board sent investigators to the Sagebrush Club following a complaint about insufficient cage funds. They found the cage holding less than 60% of the reserves required to cover outstanding chips. On September 19, 1990, the Sagebrush Club in Elko, Nevada, surrendered its gaming license and closed its doors. 63 employees were out of work. Buddy Cavanaugh had operated that property for 23 years without a single regulatory violation. Dee Cavanaugh had owned it for 11 months. Blood in the water. The closing of the Sagebrush Club did 3 things simultaneously. It triggered a lawsuit from the fired employees claiming wrongful termination. It caused the Nevada Gaming Control Board to open a formal review of Dee's other 2 properties. And it gave Gary and Connie Cavanaugh exactly the ammunition they had been waiting for. Gary Cavanaugh held a press conference in Reno in October of 1990. He stood in front of a cluster of local television cameras and used words like mismanagement and incompetence and negligence. He said his father had built those casinos with his own hands, and that what was happening to them was a desecration. He said his family would pursue every legal avenue available to protect their father's legacy. Connie gave interviews to the Reno Gazette-Journal. She said she had tried to help Dee. She said Dee had refused to listen to anyone who had actually worked for her father. She said she had watched it coming and there was nothing she could do. Dee responded through an attorney and said nothing publicly. Meanwhile, the Gaming Control Board's review of the Winnemucca property and the Cavalier Club revealed a series of problems that made the sagebrush situation look like a preview. At Winnemucca, investigators found accounting irregularities that suggested cash was not being properly tracked through the count room. Not theft necessarily, but sloppiness that created the conditions for theft and made it impossible to prove either way. At the Cavalier Club, Vincent Prater had approved a renovation to the main bar area that was contracted to a company he had a personal relationship with. A company that billed the casino $40,000 for work that independent contractors estimated should have cost $18,000. When the Gaming Control Board asked Dee about the relationship between Prater and the renovation contractor, she said she had not been aware of any conflict. The board said she should have been. The family lawsuit went to hearing in November. Gary and Connie's attorneys argued that Buddy had been under undue influence from Dee when he drafted the final version of his will in 1987, 2 years before he died. They produced witnesses who testified that Buddy had seemed distracted and emotionally dependent in his final years. They produced a psychiatrist who offered opinions about the psychology of an older man in a relationship with a younger woman. The judge was unimpressed by the psychology. But the financial evidence was starting to tell its own story, and that story was becoming impossible to ignore. The last one standing. By the spring of 1991, Dee Cavanaugh owned one casino. The Winnemucca property had closed in February, undone by the accounting irregularities the Gaming Control Board had flagged, by debts to vendors she could not cover, and by a walkout of the entire dealer staff on a Saturday night in January that left the casino floor unmanned for 4 hours while Dee was in Reno and Vincent Prater was unreachable. That left the Cavalier Club. The Cavalier Club was Buddy's flagship, his best property. A downtown Reno institution that had been operating since 1975. 312 slot machines, 40 table games, a restaurant that served the best prime rib in Washoe County for $12.95. Regulars who had been coming since Nixon was president. An identity, a brand, a loyal base that had survived everything the gaming industry had thrown at it for 16 years. Dee knew the Cavalier was her last chance. She fired Vincent Prater in March of 1991. She brought in a legitimate casino consultant from Las Vegas, a man named Edward Holloway who had 30 years of operational experience and charged $1,200 a day for his time. She gave him access to the books. She told him to tell her what needed to change. Holloway spent 2 weeks at the Cavalier Club and submitted a 40-page report. The report said the property was salvageable, but required immediate action on 9 critical areas, including cage reserves, table game staffing ratios, the vendor contract situation, and the comp structure that had been gutted and needed to be restored. It also said, in language as diplomatic as a 40-page casino audit could manage, that the owner needed to delegate operational decisions to experienced professionals and hold herself to a governance role rather than a management one. Dee read the report. She thanked Holloway for his time. She implemented 4 of the 9 recommendations partially. She ignored the rest. She did not restore the comp structure. She said the old regulars would come back when they realized the Cavalier was still the best room in Reno. The old regulars did not come back. Reno in 1991 had competition it had not had in 1985. The Peppermill had expanded. The Atlantis was growing. The Grand Sierra Resort was pulling players with amenities the Cavalier could not match. The Cavalier Club had always competed on loyalty and comfort and familiarity. Dee had stripped out the loyalty and comfort and familiarity and replaced them with a management philosophy that nobody could quite explain. The Gaming Control Board called Dee in for a formal hearing in May of 1991. They laid out the situation with bureaucratic precision. Cage reserves at the Cavalier were below required minimums. Outstanding vendor debt exceeded $2 million. Payroll was current, but only because Dee had injected personal funds from Buddy's estate, a source that was not infinite and was in fact being contested in probate court by Gary and Connie's lawsuit. The board said they had serious concerns about the property's continued viability under current operations. They gave Dee 60 days to demonstrate financial stability. She did not make it 60 days. On July 3, 1991, the Nevada Gaming Control Board suspended the Cavalier Club's gaming license pending a full review, Without a gaming license, the casino could not operate its tables or slots, which was to say, without a gaming license, it was not a casino. It was a restaurant with a parking lot. The restaurant stayed open for 2 weeks, serving prime rib and coffee to people who stopped in out of loyalty or curiosity or both. On July 18th, the restaurant closed too. The lights went off, the doors locked. The Cavalier Club, the property Harold Cavanaugh had built into the cornerstone of his life's work, was dark. 3 casinos in 11 months. The 4th had been handed to a management company under the original will structure. It survived. The 3D control did not. What was left? The civil lawsuit from Gary and Connie Cavanaugh was settled out of court in 1992. The terms were not disclosed. Nevada gaming attorneys who followed the case said privately that the settlement involved a significant portion of whatever remained in Buddy's estate, which by that point was not much. The litigation, the operational losses, the vendor debts, the employee claims, they had consumed most of what Buddy had spent 30 years building. Dee Cavanaugh moved back to California in the fall of 1991. She settled in Sacramento. She remarried in 1994 to a man named Robert Demarest, a contractor. She stayed away from the gaming industry entirely. People who knew her from the Reno years said she did not talk about it. When a Reno reporter reached her by phone in 1996 for a retrospective piece on downtown casino closures, she said she had no comment and hung up. What do you say about 11 months that cost 400 people their jobs and erased 30 years of somebody else's work? There is probably nothing adequate. Gary Cavanaugh went on to work in gaming operations for a larger Reno casino group. Connie eventually moved to Las Vegas and did consulting work in casino human resources. Dale, the accountant from Portland, was involved in the estate litigation and then went back to Portland. The Silver Spur Club in Carson City, the one property that had never been in Dee's control, operated for another 12 years before closing in 2003 when the building's owner decided not to renew the lease. The Cavalier Club building in downtown Reno became a parking structure in 1994. The Sagebrush Club in Elko was converted to retail space. The Winnemucca property sat empty for years before being demolished. Buddy Cavanaugh's name disappeared from the Nevada gaming landscape almost completely. In a city and a state where legacy means everything, where Benny Binion's name is still spoken with reverence decades after his death, Harold Cavanaugh became a cautionary footnote. The man who built carefully and left it to the wrong person, or maybe the right person who was given the wrong tools, depending on how generous you want to be. Because here's the thing, Dee Pulaski from Bakersfield, California, did not inherit those casinos because she tricked anyone. She did not manipulate a dying man against his will, whatever Gary and Connie argued in court. She married a man who loved her and who believed in her and who left her the biggest part of himself, because that is what you do when you believe in someone. He was wrong about what she was capable of. That is not a crime. That is a tragedy. The door swung open. She walked through it. And she did not know what was on the other side. And maybe that is the realest Vegas story there is, because this city is littered with the wreckage of people who inherited the dream without inheriting the knowledge. They had the keys, but did not understand the locks. They stood in front of something magnificent and beautiful that someone else built with their whole life and thought, I can do this. You cannot always do this. The house always knows the difference, even when you do not. She started out carrying drinks to strangers on a casino floor and ended up as the cautionary tale whispered in every Nevada gaming boardroom for the decade that followed, not because she was evil, not because she was a criminal, but because she was given 4 casinos with no blueprint, a family that hated her, and a system that approved her license without anyone asking the question that mattered most. The question is not, can she run a casino? The question is, does she know what she does not know? 11 months, 4 properties, 400 jobs, 30 years of work. Some inheritances are a gift. Some are a test you do not know you are taking until you have already failed. And in Las Vegas, the test is always the same, and the house always wins, even when the house is yours.